The sun glared over the Naval Academy courtyard, turning the sea of blue uniforms into a field of glistening pride. Families gathered, cameras ready, banners waving. It was the day every cadet dreamed of: graduation. Quick question before we start. What city are you watching from? If you enjoy stories that remind you what humanity's really about, hit subscribe and join the journey. Among them stood Marcus Hayes, a newly commissioned black Marine lieutenant, his posture straight, his eyes filled with years of discipline, pain, and sacrifice. He had fought through everything: poverty, doubt, and prejudice, to reach this moment. The name Hayes, stitched on his uniform, carried not just his own identity, but that of his late father, a janitor who had once told him, "Son, no one can take away your worth unless you let them." But as Marcus stepped toward the graduation stage, a shadow fell across his path. Two security guards in plain suits approached, blocking him with firm hands. "Sorry, sir," one said sharply. "This area is for graduates only." Marcus blinked, confused. "I am a graduate." The guard frowned. "You sure about that? You don't look like one of them." People began to stare. The whispers came fast, slicing through the proud air. A woman nearby murmured, "What's going on?" Another whispered, "Maybe he's lost." Marcus felt the sting of 1,000 invisible cuts. His chest tightened. He tried again, calm, respectful. "Check the roster," he said, voice steady. "Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, Alpha Company." The guard crossed his arms. "You'll need to step aside." Marcus's jaw clenched. He could hear his own pulse pounding in his ears. "You're making a mistake," he said, his dignity cracking under the weight of humiliation. But before he could protest again, the guard's hand touched his shoulder, and that's when it happened. From the corner of the courtyard, 6 men began walking toward them. Their uniforms were different, Navy SEALs, instantly recognizable by the trident pinned to their chests. Their presence cut through the crowd like a blade through silence. The lead SEAL, a tall man with sharp blue eyes and the calm of a storm, stepped forward. "What's the problem here?" The guard stammered, "Sir, this man, this Marine," the SEAL interrupted, voice cold as steel, "earned his right to stand here today." The courtyard froze. Cameras stopped clicking. Every pair of eyes turned toward them. Marcus looked up, stunned. He didn't know any of these SEALs, but they stood in front of him like brothers. The SEALs formed a half circle between Marcus and the guards, quiet, composed, but radiating authority. The air around them changed. The murmurs from the crowd died down into a charged silence. The lead SEAL, his name tag red, Commander Blake Carter, took one deliberate step forward. "You touch a Marine officer on his graduation day?" he said softly, but the sharp edge in his tone made even the guards flinch. One of them, suddenly less confident, tried to explain. "Sir, we thought—" "You thought what?" Carter cut in. "That because he's black, he doesn't belong here." The words hit like thunder. Even the wind seemed to pause. Marcus stood frozen, unsure whether to speak or just let this play out. His heart pounded with a mix of shame and anger. "Commander," one guard tried again, "we didn't mean any disrespect." "But you did disrespect him," Carter snapped. "And by doing that, you disrespected every man and woman who ever wore this uniform." The other SEALs didn't move, but their eyes said everything: fury, solidarity, pride. One of them, a stocky chief petty officer with scars on his face, muttered, "If he doesn't belong here, none of us do." Carter looked at Marcus. "Lieutenant Hayes, what's your most?" "Infantry, sir," Marcus said quietly. "First in your class, right?" Marcus blinked. How did you know that?" Carter gave the faintest smile. Word travels fast when someone earns respect the hard way. Then he turned to the guards again. "You see this man? He went through more hell than most of us ever did. You didn't stop a stranger. You stopped a warrior." The crowd stirred. People began clapping, softly at first, then louder, rippling across the courtyard like waves of awakening conscience. The guards looked crushed, their faces pale. "We're sorry, Lieutenant," one mumbled. Marcus nodded but said nothing. The pain still burned too deep. Then Carter placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, not to restrain, but to honor. "Walk with us, Marine." And together, the Marine and 6 SEALs, they walked across the courtyard toward the stage. The crowd parted in silence. Marcus's boots hit the pavement like drums of justice. Every step erased an insult. Every breath restored a piece of dignity stolen moments ago. When they reached the front row, Carter whispered, "You belong here, son. Never let anyone make you forget that again." The announcer on stage hesitated for a moment as the group approached, the Marine and 6 SEALs moving together like a living statement of unity. Then, realizing what had just unfolded, the announcer straightened his papers and spoke into the microphone, his voice ringing across the courtyard. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, United States Marine Corps." Applause thundered through the air. People stood. Parents, cadets, even instructors who had seen it all rose to their feet. Cameras flashed, capturing the sight of the young black Marine walking beside the elite Navy SEALs who had stood up for him. Marcus stepped onto the stage. For a second, his mind went blank, not from nerves, but from the flood of emotion that rose inside him. He saw his mother in the front row, tears running freely down her cheeks. She had worked 3 jobs after his father's death just to keep food on their table. When the commanding officer handed him the diploma, Marcus saluted, sharp, perfect, steady. But when their hands met, the officer quietly said, "You've done your father proud, son." Those words broke something loose inside him. As he descended from the stage, the SEALs stood waiting at the bottom of the steps. Commander Carter extended his hand. "If you ever need a team behind you, Marine, you've got one." Marcus shook his hand, gripping it tightly. "Thank you, sir." "For what you did." Carter nodded. "You didn't need saving. You just needed the world to see who you are." The 6 SEALs saluted him, one by one. It wasn't a formal gesture. It was something deeper, a gesture of brotherhood. The guards, still standing nearby, watched in silence. Their arrogance had dissolved into shame. One of them took off his cap, stepping forward hesitantly. "Lieutenant Hayes," he said softly, "I'm sorry for what I did. I judged you before I even saw you." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "We all learn somehow," he said quietly. "Just make sure you never do that to anyone else." And with that, he turned and walked toward the sunlight, the SEALs following behind like shadows of honor. The graduation ended, but the story did not. Later that week, a photo from that moment, Marcus walking proudly between the 6 SEALs, spread across military circles and social media. The caption under it read, "When respect is earned, even the bravest stand beside you." Messages poured in from veterans, cadets, and even civilians who'd never met Marcus but felt his quiet strength. He never sought attention, but his story became a reminder that courage doesn't always mean charging into battle. Sometimes, it means standing tall when the world tries to shrink you. And for those guards, they learned a lesson they would never forget, that in the ranks of those who serve, color means nothing. Only character does. Thanks for being here till the end. I know there are a million things you could be watching, so the fact that you chose to stay means more than you think. If this story touched you, let me know down below. I read every single comment myself.